Hello, everyone, and thank you again for joining. We are thrilled to have you with us today. I'm Leslie Harrell with COPC, and I will introduce your speakers in just a moment. Before we get started, just a few housekeeping items. Please note that this session is being recorded, and at the conclusion of the webinar, we will send a link to the webinar or to the recording via email to all of you. During the webinar, you are welcome and encouraged to submit any questions you have at any time. You can do this via the Q&A function toward the bottom of your screen, and we will field as many questions as we can as they come in. And then we will also be conducting 2 polling questions during the webinar. You will see these questions appear on your screen at the appropriate time, and you will be able to submit your response, and then we will share the aggregated responses in real time as part of the discussion. So let's go ahead and get started. Today's important topic on employee engagement is one that is on the minds of many customer experience leaders. In fact, COPC recently conducted global employee engagement research, which revealed many interesting findings. But one of the common themes that came out of that research is the importance of team leaders, who really are the driving force behind an engaged and motivated contact center team. So that will be the focus of our conversation today. Rick, you can go to the next slide. Thank you. Specifically, our presenters will explore 4 key topics around around employee engagement that you see on your screen here: training for team leader success, the team leader's role in recruiting quality and success, finding the right manager to staff ratios, and the value of frequent and meaningful one-on-ones. It will be based on direct results from our research, followed by specific examples and best practices employed by Harte Hanks. Note that we will also provide a direct link to the full research report in our follow-up after today's discussion. So before I introduce our speakers, just a quick overview about COPC and Harte Hanks. COPC was founded in 1996 and provides consulting, training, certification, and research for operations that support the customer experience. We like to say we literally set the standard, meaning we created the COPC Customer Experience Standard, which is a collection of operational best practices, metrics, and benchmarks that helps organizations improve CX while decreasing costs. We complete hundreds of CX engagements worldwide each year and support 9 languages. And as CX specialists, our focus is exclusively on transforming operations that support the customer experience. And this is everything from service design to operational improvements to strategic sourcing. And Harte Hanks recently celebrated their 100th anniversary, actually, so congratulations to them. Harte Hanks is a global CX company working with some of the world's largest brands, some of which you see here. They bring their resources and talents to bear with their clients in many areas, including customer care, fulfillment, logistics, and marketing services. The company has over 2,500 employees in offices around the world, including the Americas, Europe, and Asia Pacific. And we are very fortunate to have them join us today. So now for our presenters, and then we'll get right to it. We are thrilled to have Katy Crighton join us as a presenter today. Katy is a senior director with Harte Hanks. She has worked in the BPO and financial services industries, as well as the federal government. But regardless of the industry or sector, she believes great customer experience begins with an excellent employee experience. With a background in organizational development, project management, and strategic initiatives, Katy focuses on transparency, innovation, and appreciation to drive employee engagement and business success. And Rick Zayas is Vice President of CX Strategy and Performance Improvement here at COPC. With 3 decades of experience in business operations and IT supporting the customer experience, he works with clients to transform customer and service journeys, increase customer loyalty, and improve business results. So with that, Rick, I will hand it over to you.
Thank you, Leslie. Welcome everyone again. And it's a pleasure to be here with you today, presenting on this topic. And I'm honored to also have my co-speaker, Katy, here with me. The way we're going to work through this here today, as Leslie mentioned, as is that I will share some of the insights from our recently completed research and reports that were done globally and with a regional focus. So today's report or today's presentation is based on the US report. So the findings that we have from an employee engagement perspective for agents in a contact center environment in the US. So I'll go through the insights that we have identified in that research. And then Katy gets to bring it to life, right? She will share some real examples of how Harte Hanks has addressed each of these areas that we're focused in on today, those 4 areas that Leslie pointed out earlier. We all know that team leaders are extremely important in a contact center, so that's not news. But what came through this research, amongst other things, is really how significant the impact is that they have on an organization, on the success of their teams, and on the agent job satisfaction and retention, right? And all of that translates into also the impact it will have on the customer experience as well. So again, a number of findings come through that report. Please feel free to go to our website at copc.com to download your own free copy. But in today's session, we'll focus on 4 key areas. COPC, when it comes to team leaders, when it comes to agents, this is not something that is new for us in terms of how important and how critical it is. We know for you to be successful in the contact center space, you've got to get this right? You need the right agents. You need to equip them to be successful, and you need to support them in their growth and development as well. And you need team leaders. You need that frontline leadership role to be at its best in order for them to be successful. So this is something in our standard. There are 4 main categories. One of them is focused on people and primarily focused on the agent role itself and that first layer of leadership, right? These team leaders, sometimes referred to as supervisors and other contact centers, right? This is a critical function. And your success with your customers and with your bottom line is dependent on how effective this role is carried out. So the first area of insight that we drew from the report, from the research that was done, has to do with the skills and knowledge that the team leaders have and the impact of their preparation, right? How skilled, how knowledgeable they are with the right things, that impact on the agent perception of their own experience in that role, right? And with that organization. So it is critically important that we're able to identify what are the skills, right? What are the right skills? What are the right knowledge areas that are going to help this frontline leader be successful in guiding a team of agents, right? And supporting them in their roles. And the agents know when they have a good one or not, right? They clearly perceive when they have a fully equipped, empowered leader, someone who's able to help them be successful in their roles. And that perception has a direct correlation to how they feel about their jobs. Looking at the research that is displayed here with these bars, those agents that strongly agreed that their team leader had the right skills and knowledge, 83% of them were satisfied with their jobs. 84% of them were committed to staying with that organization for the next year, right? And then when we go to the other end of the spectrum, if the agent strongly disagreed that their team leaders had the right skills and knowledge to be effective in their roles, now you're looking at 28% satisfaction with the job and 23% commitment to stick around, right? So this has a significant impact, ensuring that we've equipped and prepared our team leaders properly in the contact center space. So I'd like for Katy to weigh in on this. What is Harte Hanks' approach to training and development of team leaders?
Thanks, Rick. I love that research, and we believe that it's very true. The team leaders are critical. But when you start to look at the word skills, there's a lot there to unpack, right? Your team leads have gotten to where they are because they're strong operationally. They have the technical skills, they know the job, which is critical to gaining the trust and confidence of employees. But it's not as critical to gaining the engagement and the retention and the satisfaction. Those are the leadership competencies that are necessary. So when you're looking at the team lead position, we do a very careful job of making sure that we're picking the right people from an operational standpoint, but they haven't had the opportunity to develop and hone those leadership skills. So a lot of our training is built around that critical component. They're not administrative leaders, but they do have an important role, as the name suggests, in leadership. So we try to really work through, how do you identify and manage and lead a high performing team? And high performing teams mean everything from, they know what's expected of them. They're being managed to those expectations, goal setting, and they feel motivated and empowered to do their job and to be successful in the job. Leading a high performing team can be a challenge. And so we try and start there with what that means and what that looks like. One critical piece of being able to lead a team like that is coaching. And so a lot of focus is spent on, how do you become a coach for your team? Communication is two ways. You have to be a great active listener. And it's that double loop learning as you're talking to someone, helping them find their own solutions and really identifying the true cause of the problem, so that we're not just putting a band-aid on a symptom, but we're giving them the answers and the support that they truly need to do better. So training, as it says, there's a lot of training that we do. I've tried to roll it up into two main topics. The coaching and effective communication is the place that we initially start. So what's the difference between being a mentor and a coach? How do you effectively communicate? How do you, what are the different coaching styles? Not every person is going to react the same to the same style. So how do we empower and give the tools to the team leads to try different things and to find what's going to work with each individual on their team? And then influencing without authority. They aren't the administrative leader. It doesn't mean that they can't make a powerful impact on the team and with individual employees. That is, the critical piece of starting our team leads. For the high performing experienced team leads, we like to put them through our supervisor onboarding boot camp. It gives them a little more exposure to what comes next, and it helps start them on that thinking path of becoming a supervisor. And that really talks about the switch from being a follower to a leader. And it's something that we know every frontline manager, sometimes, every experienced manager struggles with that change. It's a different dynamic, it's a different thought process, and it requires a lot of flexing and learning there. And then also establishing the basics and the expectations of what it means to be a supervisor. It's easy to look from the outside and think you can do a job, but once you start understanding all of those pieces you don't see from the outside looking in, I think it helps prepare people when they're starting to look at the next step in their career. And then the last thing to address here is the ongoing coaching and development. It's not a one and done. It's not that, oh, I'm a team lead and I've passed all of my mandatory trainings and I've done the extra steps. It doesn't end. So we like to partner our team leads with our supervisors in a buddy program. At the end of the day, the goal is for the team lead to be the right hand of the supervisor and to be an extension to provide the support that employees look to their supervisors for as well. It helps us create a more effective supervisor, and it builds a stronger team and team lead. And through that process, they can be placed into a growth pool with different career development opportunities. The next step is not necessarily a supervisor. There are lots of places to go in our customer care and inside sales businesses. We could do BI or workforce. The team lead gets to have conversations with workforce about scheduling and trying to manage some of those intricacies. We also like to partner them with our recruiters and our talent acquisition team. And Rick, I know you have a lot more to say about what a team lead's role in recruitment really means.
Very much so. And I love great examples, like really good practices that you've walked us through, Katy. There's a lot to unpack there. Like as you were talking, I was thinking, ooh, I want to learn more about, several of the points you brought forward. I'm going to ask you maybe one or two questions about some of the things I heard. So I'm understanding now you've got a split role here. You have a team leader role, you have a supervisor role, you have training for both roles. That's really great to hear. And as is stated on the slide here, this training is required to be completed before they take on the position, this leadership position. Can you help me understand, like beyond completing the training, how does Harte Hanks know when a team leader is ready?
Oh, that's a great question. And it's tricky, right? Because you can have somebody who's operationally fantastic, but they're just not ready for that leadership role. We have the opportunity because we conduct many ramps over the course of the year. So we have a lot of seasonal promotion opportunities where somebody can test the waters and see if the position is right for them, but also get the feedback from the supervisor in the seasonal role to help them become a better candidate for a permanent team lead position. And I think that's one critical thing is it's not one and done. They can test it, they can try it. They can try it on different teams and different accounts. Sometimes it clicks one place and it doesn't click another one. So we don't like to look at things black and white. We'd like to find the right fit for the right person, because that also benefits the account. Where every account is different, every client culture is different. So when we can find that right chemistry, you just know when it's right. But we have a very close relationship with the supervisors. They're usually the ones who are recommending somebody for a seasonal team lead role. When we do the promotion, it's typically somebody who has attempted seasonal roles and has shown themselves to be effective in that position.
Okay, great. Thank you for the additional insights there. The other thing, well, there were several that caught my attention, but the other that I'll go to now is, I love that you're doing ongoing development, right? And just wanted to know if you could share maybe an example of what's a skill or knowledge area that is part of the ongoing development of team leaders that you hone in on at Harte Hanks.
Sure. So and I'll pick on HR since I'm part of HR. We will ask for team leaders to support us during ramps with interviewing. And so they get a little insight into, okay, this is how we've classified the ideal candidate profile. This is what we're looking for in hiring. This is how we screen and try to identify candidates that are going to be successful in that profile. And so they learn how to think about things from a different organization's point of view. And I think anytime you have a broader view of the organization and how things in the process, it helps you put pieces together in your own position.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. Thank you, Katie. And I'm sure that helps them when they're also having conversations with their agents, right? To be able to provide that concept, that context of why things are done the way they're done, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you. All right. That was great, Katie. So the next area of insight from the report, from our research report, that I'd like to move into has to do, and Katie mentioned this as well, on the recruitment process and the impact that recruitment has on agent satisfaction and retention. In particular, the effectiveness of that recruitment process at describing the agent role accurately, and how that influences how agents later on feel about their role when they're finally in it and such. It came through very clear from the research that this is a key component of job satisfaction and retention for agents. When they strongly agreed that the role was described accurately as part of recruitment, 95% of them were satisfied with their jobs, and 95% of them were committed to sticking around, right? The complete other side of this, when they strongly disagree that the role was depicted effectively or accurately in that recruiting process, there were none that were satisfied and none that were planning on staying with the organization. So a huge opportunity here for ensuring that recruitment process takes time to accurately depict the agent role itself and everything that's a part of it, right? Well, who better than either agents themselves or team leaders, right? The agents that are doing the job and team leaders that are the closest leadership role to that job, that are there supporting agents and helping them be effective. Who better than a team leader to participate in this recruitment process and help convey the demands of the role, how different functions and different systems are able to help agents be successful in case there's a little bit of anxiety there, kind of bring some peace, some comfort in that recruiting process, but really to just accurately depict this is what is expected, this is how it's going to work, this is what's going to help you be successful, these are some of the challenges that are faced in the role. That goes a long way at ensuring that agents will be satisfied with their jobs, right? And feel like they've landed in the right place and want to stick around. So again, let's go to my co-speaker, Katy here. Katy, tell us about how Harte Hanks gets team leaders involved with your recruitment process.
Yeah, I think those stats are really across the board. Every position, every company, if your job isn't what you think it is, you're not going to be happy with it. And it doesn't benefit the employee, the company, or our clients to just fill the role, put someone in that seat. So we spend a lot of time and effort making sure that we can answer the questions of the candidates as they're coming through. And we're very, it goes back to the transparency that Leslie mentioned I focus on. We're very transparent about what the job is, what the expectations are for the role, and how to be a successful employee in that position. And the team leads have been critical. I mentioned before that they're part of our interview process. The interview is a two-way interview. We don't just sit down and ask the questions of the candidate. We want them to have the conversation with us and to know what they're going to be getting. And so what better way to answer the questions of the candidate than to have somebody there who's been doing that job and who has worked on that account and who knows the team and the culture. So having the team leads in as part of the interview process, make sure that it's an authentic interview and a candidate experience. And so we bring them along. If we're going to be doing a recruiting event or an activity, we love to have team leads representing Harte Hanks there along with our recruiting team, serving as that point of question. They help us assess candidates, as I mentioned, through part of the interview process. We also include them in our new hire training program. They, can be a face that pops in and talks about what to expect on that program and, what to expect on the account. And you are starting on the account then with a friendly face, who you're going to be working with. And so as part of that, conveying the agent role, I've already mentioned it's a two-way interview. And understanding what the ideal candidate profile is, they can have very authentic conversations with the candidate about the role, about the account, and really, are they a fit or not? Because it's only beneficial to the candidate to get the job if they're going to be a good fit as well. And we try and be very honest about those pieces in addition to what we need. So the team leads, during the interview process, they have the conversation, they are doing the screening questions, they can ask probing questions if they're wondering if there's something that needs to be a little dug into a little deeper. And then they come back to the talent acquisition team and they provide feedback and observations on the types of candidates that they're seeing. So before the person gets the job offer, are we hitting the right market? And we have very different accounts and we try and hire the right person for the account, as I mentioned. So are we hitting the right candidate profile for that particular account? And then after we've hired the individuals and they're in training and they're in production, the TA team goes back and they say, how did we do? Was this, we thought that this was a great class of candidates. Can we recalibrate anything? Are there any questions that we should ask to help do a better job screening on the front end? And so the team leads are critical to that conversation piece as well, so that we're constantly improving our hiring process.
Very good. Thank you, Katy. Really good practices there as well. And I can see how a team leader would feel valued in your organization. As Leslie mentioned earlier when providing the overview of our two organizations, COPC, we work with hundreds of organizations every year. And I'm not going to say it's the norm to see a team leader disengaged with the recruitment process, or even, I love this, advocate for the new hire training, to have them pop in and begin establishing a relationship and show, hey, I'm interested in your well-being. I care, like I want you to be successful. I have to imagine that goes a long way. So really exciting things that you at Harte Hanks are doing. Regarding the last thing you were talking about there on getting team leader feedback on the newly hired and newly in production around the operations floor, we sometimes say agent. Who's gathering that feedback at Harte Hanks and how is it used? Can you elaborate a little bit more there?
Yeah, that's a great question. Our talent acquisition team, manager, supervisor, and our recruiters have a very tight relationship with operations. We can't hire for them if we don't. And so they have regular conversations just as part of their natural business. And it always comes back to, how did we do? So it may be our recruiter having a conversation with the team lead. It may be a little more formal where the supervisor or manager is doing a review of a class, especially if we've had a large hiring event. But even beyond that, we have weekly outlook calls across the accounts where we have HR represented, workforce management and the accounts. And so that's always a great opportunity to say, what happened in this class? Did we overachieve? Did we underachieve? So we have multiple opportunities to have these conversations at all levels.
Very good, very good. Such a, recruitment, such a critical component of kind of this ongoing success with agents. And I just love how engaged Harte Hanks has team leaders involved with that effort. Thank you, Katy. So moving on to the next area of insight from our research, and some of this research comes from that employee engagement research that we conducted, and some of it also comes from a separate series of research that we've done called the Global Benchmark Series. So again, when you hit our website at copc.com, you're going to see different research reports available to you with varied focus. Take advantage of that, leverage that. One of the key concepts here that is showing to have an impact on agents has to do with finding the right manager to staff ratio for that frontline leadership role. And so in our research, we asked, for various leadership roles in the organization, what is the ratio that you're using in your contact center environment? And more than not, what we found is that frontline leadership role has about 16 or so agents reporting to them. That's not to say that that's a standard. That's not to say that that's a best practice in any way. Really, it's just to say, like, this is what we're seeing on a common basis based on this research. For your organization, it's really going to come down to a number of factors for you to be successful in identifying what is that right ratio. You've got to think about things, COPC and our work with clients, you've got to think about things like, what's the complexity of the inquiries that are coming through and the risk tied to those inquiries from customers. I think that complexity has grown as digital assisted type technologies, so self-service type technologies have taken on more and more of I'll say the simpler, the less risky transactions. More of the complex and challenging inquiries are still falling on live agents to be able to figure out how to resolve. So when you think about that, these ratios have to be at the right level to give them the right support. When you think about your agent training program and you give yourself kind of an honest assessment of how effective, how comprehensive is that? Are our agents really ready for the role when they come into production? Do they have tools? Are their knowledge management resources, very, easy to use and effective at kind of helping them through finding answers for the customers that they're supporting? If these things are lacking in any way, then that ratio has to come down, right? Because they're going to need more and more. They're going to lean more and more on their team leaders, and those team leaders have to be prepared for the role, right? When we talked about earlier about their training and development. So this is a critical, function, a critical decision that every contact center has to make, and we've got to get it right if we want our team leaders to be most effective at helping agents perform at a high level and feel valued, feel supported, feel cared for, and want to stay with that organization. So back to Katy.
Well, Rick, would now be a good time to do the poll?
Oh yeah, I almost forgot about that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Leslie. Thank you for saving the day there. Let's drop it in and see. I think the question is going to ask how many agents typically report to a team leader in your operation. So audience, get involved. Let us know what you do in your world. Thank you, Leslie. I would just plow ahead.
You bet.
You didn't pause me.
We'll just give it a minute, a second, and then we'll see what we have.
Yeah, it's filling up fast. Got
It
an
is.
active audience here.
It is.
All right.
All right, we'll go ahead and end it. Thanks, everybody.
All right, so it looks like for the majority, you've got an agent kind of to leader ratio of somewhere between 11 to 15. Right, and then it kind of branches out and gets smaller in terms of less than 10 is 15%, 16 to 20, 25%, and more than 20. There's a small component of our audience here that have more than 20 using or with a large, I'm going to say, agent to leadership ratio. So interesting results. Seems to support the numbers we got back from our research as well. Thank you, Leslie, for that pause, and thank you everyone for participating in that as well. So let's see what does Harte Hanks do. So help us understand, what is the manager to staff ratio that you've honed in on for that frontline leadership role, and help us understand why you've settled in on that number.
Sure. We're right in line. We target a 1 to 15 to 1 to 17 ratio. As everybody knows, it's never ideal. You hit that point for a period of time and then it starts to shift. And that's one reason why we find the team lead role so critical. If we've got supervisors who are on the higher end of the ideal ratio, then a team lead is there to partner with them and to help keep them help them be more effective. So we use them as a true partner to the team lead. I think it's a math problem when you start looking at it. We started with, what do we want from our supervisors? So how do we want them to manage their teams and their employees? And what does that look like? So everything from frequency of feedback, which I know we're going to get to in a little bit, but the administrative requirements, the team meeting requirements, and then how do we help them become effective in doing it to that degree? And the answer is, we needed a team lead. We need team leads to help support them in that role. We also need team leads to learn the role so that when they step into the supervisor position, they're ready to take on a team of 15 or 16 individuals. That is not a small group to learn how to manage. So if you've already had your feet wet, then it helps with the supervisor transition. So in that respect, we look at the team lead role not only from team lead down, but from team lead up. How do we get them to a higher level in their career and within our company? And so I think the coaching goes two ways, where we try and help, as you can see, why we do the lower ratio. We do frequent performance management. We'll get into that a little bit more, but we have mandatory weekly touch bases with each one of our agents. And so you can't do that if you've got 30 people. But how do you have a quality conversation with agents for 30 minutes every week? What does that look like? And so they are able to divide and conquer where necessary. We also use it as a way to rapidly roll out changes. Something can be tweaked, something can be identified, and we need to cascade the communication. If we know that there's a conversation happening with every agent once a week, that's a great opportunity to make sure that it is getting from senior leadership all the way down to the front line in a very quick and already structured manner.
Very good. This aligns quite clearly with, I think when Leslie was doing your introduction, there was something in there about the importance of the agent experience, right? You can't have great customer experience without great agent experience. So these small ratios point towards an organization that is really focused on helping the agent feel supported, be able to be successful in their role. Thank you, Katy, for sharing that. The frequent performance management, and you brought it up a couple of times, plays right into a transition into our next and final research insight that we want to talk about here. And that has to do with the frequency of one-on-one reviews between that frontline leader and their agents, and understanding, how important is that conversation. So Katy talked about that at Harte Hanks, they have this mandatory weekly 30-minute meeting that leader is having with their agents. What we found in our overall research of our US contact centers is that only 15% of these contact centers are holding weekly discussions, weekly one-on-one meetings with their agents. And in fact, less than 50% of the agents are having even monthly discussions with their leaders. Now, before we get into, what is the impact of that? Now that Leslie has caught me before trying to get too far ahead here, I think we have another poll for the audience to participate in. So audience, you've already shown us that you are very engaged. We've got another question up for you here. How often do your agents receive a structured one-on-one review with their frontline leader? our audience gets a gold star
Right.
for active participation.
Absolutely.
Mhm. Give this another minute or so.
Yep.
All right. Seems to have settled in.
All
All
right.
right. Right. Looks like we've got 40% of the population doing this once a week. That's exciting. If I add the 40 with the 25, 2/3 of the population, roughly, is doing it at least every 2 weeks. That's cool to see. And then the majority of what remains is being done monthly or less, right? And then we've got a few that go out pretty far here, once a quarter or annually as well. So let's look at what the research showed us about the importance of this frequency. It came through very clear that these conversations matter to agents, right? And you know, as you got to think about what's being discussed in that conversation. Clearly, there's a performance component of that in terms of how well they are doing at fulfilling the obligations of the role and what can be done to kind of help them continue to be successful or to improve their performance. But there's other parts of that conversation that, of course, are going to be important to an agent in their ongoing development and their interest in, from a career perspective, in your organization and such. But the numbers are very clear that if you have this conversation with them on a weekly basis, 84% of those agents are expressing satisfaction with the job, and that number drops very rapidly as soon as you drop off that frequency. So when you move to 2 weeks or more, we're in the 70% range of satisfaction. You move beyond a month, you get down to the 50s in terms of satisfaction percentage of, that are satisfied with their roles. So a significant drop off once we get past weekly conversations between their leader and the agents. What's the impact from a job commitment perspective, from their expectation to stay with that organization? Fairly significant as well. If you're having weekly conversations with your agents, 90% of those that participated in our research stated they were willing, they wanted to stick around with this organization, right? So it says a lot to them when you invest time in having these conversations with them and the value that they feel from having that time spent with them, right? Again, significant drop-offs just with upping the or slowing down the frequency a bit. When it moves to 2 weeks or a month, it's down in the 70s. When it moves beyond that, it's in the 50s and 60s in terms of their stated commitment to stay with that organization. So there's a lot to be said and a lot to be gained about having meaningful, frequent conversations with your agents. So let's flip it back to Katy. Katy, what frequency? Well, you already mentioned it's weekly. Tell us more why you've chosen to go with weekly. Like what are the gains from that?
Well, I will say I personally have regular focus groups with about 10 to 12 agents each time. And I consistently hear they stay because of their leadership and they feel supported. And so right there, I mean, straight from the front line, I can see the benefit of having these opportunities. And I think that the actual conversation aside, building that kind of rapport and relationship is critical to developing the trust that is necessary in a manager and employee relationship. So I know it could seem that we're forcing that conversation to happen, but really, if everybody on this call who deals with this population knows, if you don't carve out the time in their schedule, it can't happen. And so I think with us saying mandatory, it just means that we are prioritizing 30 minutes of the agent's time and 30 minutes of the supervisor team lead time to have these conversations on a regular basis. And we see the benefit of that every day in all of the conversations that happen. So that, that trust that's been built is number one. Again, going back to something that I had mentioned earlier with the rapid intervention and consistent monitoring, as well as the root cause analysis. If you have a great agent and they start to slip and you're having a weekly conversation, and you're saying what's going on, it's catching it before that person is a true performance issue, and we can make adjustments. Maybe we have examples where somebody's daycare schedule changed and they're struggling to get back in time. Well, we can adjust their schedule to make sure that they're not failing for no fault of their own. But we can't do it if we don't know. So having those conversations, make sure that we're aware of the employee as a whole person and what's going on there so that we can do the proper intervention. And so those manager-employee relationships have benefits on all sides. And I think that's one of the key reasons why employees are telling us that they feel supported and they want to stay. And not only stay, we have employees who leave and come back. Our boomerang rate is tremendously high. And a lot of the feedback we get on whether they want to come back is it wasn't what they thought leaving. And so I think making sure that they have that team environment and that supported environment, it's why they come and it's why they come back and why they stay. So we use these as a chance to really recognize their good performance. We've got very clear objective metrics that we can talk through why they're performing, why they're not performing. And then we can also say for the why are you not performing, what can we do to help you perform better? And really developing those action plans and intervening before they become a true issue. And so, and as I had mentioned before, it's a two-way conversation. Agents have the chance to come back and say, I'm having a really hard time lowering my AHT. I need to, if you want my handle time there, how do I do it? And we have the, as you're kind of combining some of the last few bullets on this point here, but we had an account where the program manager said, I'm hearing from my supervisors and team leads that our agents are stressed because all of a sudden they had an onslaught of customers who were calling with, complaints, and they were pretty irate with these complaints. We were able to provide interventional training to all of the agents on how to deal with an upset customer. And then we see that, they become more motivated because they feel like they're empowered and engaged and they have the tools to address the issues that were really creating a lot of stress and dissatisfaction. If we didn't have at every single level the communication, we would never have known what was really going on there, and we could have lost people. And so I think that quick intervention and issue identification is another key benefit of doing the frequent conversations. And then because we have trained our team leads and we have moved them up in the promotion process, we see not only engagement among our leadership, 76% of our leaders in customer care started as agents. And so they know they can coach, they can have these conversations at every single level. And we see it in retention at our higher levels too. I have, operations managers, account managers who have come up through this process, and they've been with us for 10 years or more. And so, I think that the retention, it's not just retention at the agent level, it is retention at every single position in our organization.
Great point. Great point.
Katie and Rick, we have a couple of questions that came in on this topic. So it's a popular topic. One of them is, does the coaching or debriefing after a failed quality monitoring count in those weekly one-on-ones?
No, we don't. The weekly one-on-one is a carved out time. So if we're calling somebody in, it is in addition to that.
Thank you.
I would support that from a COPC perspective. We would say it's the best practice to have that quality coaching session separate from the rest of the conversation that also has to happen, because there's other aspects of their role that need to be accounted for in that one-on-one.
Great, thank you. And then one other along these lines, Katie, that you can probably provide some insights on too. It is, I see that having one-to-one meetings every week asking the same questions could get boring after a while, but could see it being beneficial for lower performers in order to have a weekly plan to boost performance. So they would ask if they're wrong in that thinking, or if you approach it a bit differently in terms of what those conversations are on a weekly basis.
I think the context to that question is correct, which is why we spend so much time and energy training our team leads and our supervisors on how to have coaching conversations so that it's not the same question every time. And then that's why we also focus on it being a two-way conversation. So it's the agent having an opportunity to ask questions. Sometimes those questions are, I'm ready for my next step in this role. How do I do that? What are my career opportunities here? So it's not always about performance and metrics. That is always a key component of it, but we host a broad array of topics and, challenges that the agent's having, and building that manager relationship. They could be talking about your family and just getting to know one another and building trust. So we provide that information in our training as to how to have a quality coaching session every week.
Great. And this is a really good question too. How can we measure or assess coaching effectiveness? In my company, we use agents' performance improvement. Any additional insights?
That is a great question. And it's not always easy. What works for one team and one coach may not work for another. And so I think one way is we conduct regular focus groups at every single level. So, the supervisors have their team meetings, the account managers have team meetings. I personally sit down with agents. And so we use multiple opportunities to identify what's effective and what's not effective. At the end of the day, performance metrics, attendance metrics, they do help us identify where we need to maybe dig in and see if something else is going on. And so I also think when you create a culture of transparency and communication, you are more likely to get that two-way feedback. So if something is not working and agents are accustomed to having communication, then they tell us and they find ways to tell us if something is not happening. So part of it is a broader cultural experience where we've created this openness and people feel comfortable raising their hand.
And I think we received a comment, not a question. It's almost like they knew what you were going to say. And they said the conversation for one-on-ones isn't just coaching and focusing on metrics. It's also about asking the agent to bring innovative ideas about performance and success building and using it for career pathing and planning as well.
Absolutely.
So, great.
Very good. Awesome. A lot of great approaches and strategies that have been discussed on this page alone. Like, I feel like we could have done an entire webinar just on this right here. This has been very rich. Thank you, Katy, for sharing. And audience, for those questions. Those are really, really good questions. And we can talk even more deeply about that. So as we're getting close to the end here of our time from today's webinar, I wanted to kind of bring back and kind of summarize the key points that were brought forward as part of the research that COPC conducted and really brought to life and in full color in the amazing practices that Harte Hanks has put in place to help team leaders and their organizations be successful as they care for their clients' needs and businesses, right? So definitely a strong team leader program is crucial to an engaged and motivated contact center team. And the 4 key concepts we covered in this session today were: 1, hey, we've got to know what skills and knowledge are needed to be most effective in that role. And we have to design a very deliberate training program to get them ready for that role as well, right? So it's important to enable team leaders with the right skills and knowledge for them to be most effective. It's also important that we figure out what's the right ratio from a team leader to agent perspective that's going to allow them to provide that investment, that care in helping agents feel valued, right? And to continue to succeed and grow in your organization. The third point that we discussed today was the importance of getting team leaders involved in the recruitment process, which we don't necessarily see done on a common basis. So elevate them to participate in this critical decision-making process where you're trying to figure out, hey, is this the right person to become another member of our team, and help that candidate understand, as came through in our research, what's it going to be like as an agent in our organization, right? Because that accurate depiction of that role goes a long way in their job satisfaction and retention. And then finally, the last point that we discussed fairly deeply, there was a lot of good stuff there in terms of what Katy was able to share, the importance of the benefits of frequent and meaningful one-on-ones, right? It's not just let's get together and chat each week. There has to be intention behind that. There has to be proper, again, development of what is going to happen in these conversations so that they are rich, so that they are valued, so that they are meaningful to the agent and to the ongoing success of the organization. Katy, any final thoughts you wanted to share on these 4 points?
No, I mean, I think this definitely hit all of the main categories, and each one of these has so much under it and so many challenges, but also exciting opportunities. And I think that the job of creating this environment is never done. It's one of those things where you never say, yeah, we did it, because it's always shifting and you're always having to meet new environmental challenges.
Well said, well said. Katy, what an honor to be co-speaking with you here today. Leslie, I'm going to turn it back over to you. Are there any other questions from the group that we should be entertaining?
Yes, I was just, we probably have time for one or two more. One of the questions that came in was, when you have a small captive customer service team that grows into, if I'm interpreting this correctly, into a larger contact center with in-house growth of agents to team leads. So they've grown up just like you were talking about, Katy, with your agents. How do these team leaders learn the skills of team management and KPI achievement? Some of which you talked to with your training and development programs.
And I think, there's the technical organizational development answer to this, but at the end of the day, it's about clearly defining what the skills are that your team leads need to know, and identifying different opportunities to teach them. So, time management can be built into pretty much everything you do, but your supervisors and your management and your senior leadership has to identify that as a priority and communicate it and focus on it. So you're not going to be able to develop it yourself as a team lead in that position. Your management has to be supporting you, and a strong HR function that's helping do it. I'm a firm believer that HR can't do it for the organization, but you can at least create the tools and the pathways to support that development. It's not an easy thing, but it starts with communicating and identifying the goals. What are your competencies and your skill sets that you want to build? And then it's identifying different opportunities, whether formal training or informal coaching at every level of management. And then it's holding people accountable for it. If you want people to manage their time well, then they have to show up to meetings on time. It's the little things and the big things that reinforce that overall shift.
Thank you, Katy. I want to add to that with something that Katy brought up earlier as well, when we were talking about the training and development of team leaders in particular, and some for supervisors. There's a certain amount of time before you even get to like the formal training, where you're observing agents that are demonstrating some tendencies and interest towards leadership, right? And what I recall Katy speaking earlier, and what COPC has seen in high performance organizations is you can begin to introduce them to certain aspects of the role, right? And help them understand, hey, here's a component that if someday you turn into a team leader, you're gonna need to know. So you can give them some guidance, some mentoring, some training, and allow them to take on a little bit more responsibility, even as an agent, for them to be able to kind of stretch and see, is this something for me? And is this role going to be a fit or not? And it helps the agent feel more comfortable about, is that a career direction I want to go? And it helps the organization understand, right, is this person really going to be a great candidate for that as well?
That's great. Yeah.
Yep. Thank you, Rick.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we're about out of time. I'm respectful of everyone's time here today, but we thank everybody for joining us. And Katy and Rick, thank you very much for the insights and best practices shared. Just as a reminder to everyone, we will send a link out with the link to the recording. So if you missed anything or want to share it, please do. It's also available on the COPC website, and we will also share a link to the full employee engagement research report, where you can see these findings as well as the full report. And of course, if you have additional questions that we didn't get to, our apologies, but feel free to continue the conversation or reach out to Katy or Rick via their contact information here, and they will be happy to answer your questions or continue the conversation.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to join you guys. It was a great idea exchange. I always love hearing different perspectives and digging into the research. So thank you.
Likewise. Thanks so much, Katy. And thank you, Rick. And thank you for everyone who attended. That concludes today's webinar. Have a great day.